So the third Knives Out movie released, and it was another banger. I wish it could have had a bigger movie theater release. It's unfortunate that Netflix values hurting theaters more than it values making money, but whatever. Ever since I saw the first Knives Out, I've become a big Rian Johnson fan. He's got an incredible sense of style and is so good at making movies that just suck you into the plot from the beginning to the end. But alas, he's built up a pretty big army of haters, mostly because of the certain movie he made that starts with The and ends with Last Jedi. It's perhaps the most reviled movie of all time. Well, until the next Star Wars movie released. Honestly, I only saw it once in release, and I thought it was pretty cool. Maybe I should rewatch it sometime. But that Australian guy and his army of clones have practically built a career off of hating this movie. Apparently it had woke green milk or something. Nevertheless, this is the baggage that Shapiro starts this review off with. Now, I can't imagine why Ben would dislike this movie in particular.
It's hard, connecting with people in a genuine way.
I know. And I tried everything. Believe me, I hammered the race thing, I hammered the gender thing, the trans thing, the border thing, the homeless thing, the war thing, the election thing, the abortion thing, the climate thing. Thing about induction stoves, Israel, library books, vaccines, pronouns, AK-47, socialism, BLM, CRT, the CDC, DEI, 5G, everything. All of it I did. Nobody, just nothing. People are just numb these days. I don't know why.
But anyways, let's get started with this very dramatically edited intro.
Alrighty, folks, we're here to review Wake Up Dead Man. It's the latest Knives Out mystery from director Rian Johnson, responsible for masterpieces like The Last Jedi and Glass Onion, both of which you can view my prior reviews. Obviously, I love them. It is filled with stupid characters and stupid writing, and Rian Johnson's a stupid, stupid man. We'll get to that in a moment.
Honestly, I like this intro. It gets me hyped. Now, let's hear some complaints.
Of riches, a cornucopia, and somehow Rian Johnson blows all of it.
I appreciate the reaction gif. Honestly, it's too bad that randomly inserting memes until your video fell out of style. Maybe I should also bring it back.
I will say that the movie holds your interest. It holds your interest because it moves pretty fast, but it violates the same cardinal rule as Glass Onion.
It's so dumb.
So dumb, it's brilliant.
No!
And this drives me up a wall. If you're going to present a mystery, like the original Knives Out, you must present the clues to the viewer such that if they watch the first two acts of the film, and then the reveal happens in the third act, sure, they might have missed something, but all the clues are present, so you could have theoretically figured out who did what. In the first Knives Out, this is actually there. In the first Knives Out, very unlikely you're able to figure out the mystery the first time you watch it, but once you know the answer, you could go back and rewatch the first Knives Out, despite all my criticisms of the film, and you could actually see how the mystery was constructed. My big critique of Glass Onion is that precisely the opposite was true.
Okay, so I actually went back and rewatched the film just for this little response video, all while keeping track of every hint and clue I could find, and so here's a nice little non-exhaustive list. Martha was taught from the beginning that wealth corrupts, so it makes sense that she would want to keep it out of Wick's and Sai's hands later on. This clue is later pointed out by Blanc himself, but yeah, it's suspicious whenever Rudd mentions that he has to meet up with the others before the police here. It's the first hole in his story. And similarly, the second double head is totally visible in this photo. It's not impossible to see. I mean, the second lamp is right there. It's certainly not easy to see on a first viewing, but on a second viewing, it's very clearly right there. Martha repeatedly makes a scene and distracts people throughout the movie, whether that be when Jeremy Renner stabs Wicks, or when they're trying to investigate in the church later on, and looking back, these outbursts were clearly planned. Before Wick's death, you can hear him literally start yelling about Eve's apple being restored to the tree. He was not preaching about Jesus here, he was literally talking about reclaiming that diamond for himself. And if you're very perceptive, you could have figured out that this is a diamond holder beforehand. And finally, whenever Judd has the hallucination that he stabs Wicks, you can kind of tell that it's very unreal, as he now magically has a tool that he didn't have before getting knocked out. And plus, right after, he has another hallucination, which is obviously fake. So this helps confirm that the first one wasn't real. And one other thing, which is more of a cool detail, but whenever Judd is asked how he's doing by Louise, and obviously isn't doing well, rather than lie, he avoids the question and moves on to ask about her. I didn't keep track, but it's very possible that he never once lies in this movie, he just leaves out details. Which seems to be the central theme of how this plot is constructed. Most of the time, characters don't really lie, they just leave out key details that'll be important later on. This movie is a multi-stage mystery. There's lots of reveals, not just one big one at the end. Like for example, around 1 hour in, there's the reveal that Judd is skipping parts of the truth and that Wicks was an alcoholic. And there's also a sort of fake out reveal. The Wicks came back from the dead, and then the final reveal. It makes it hard to predict things beyond these big reveals, but each review has a few small hints before it. One thing I will point out is that honestly, I think this is just as easy to follow and predict as the first movie, which is to say, not that easy. The first movies both had much bigger twists on the formula of a whodunit movie, with the first movie fake out revealing the murderer like 30 minutes into the movie. And Glass Onion's whole conceit is that it makes the murderer super obvious from the beginning, even from the title of the movie, and then misdirects you with all the extra stuff before revealing that the obvious choice was right. Wake Up Dead Man doesn't really have a big twist to the formula. It's just a very layered mystery. Don't get me wrong, I didn't guess most of the reveals, but on a second viewing, I honestly think it is very easy and fun to follow along with the movie with your prior knowledge. I heavily recommend rewatching this movie if you haven't. Overall though, I don't really think it matters if the mystery isn't all that pre-fireable. It's the real appeal of the movie, for me at least, was in the characters, the roller coaster of the plot, and the themes and message about religion. So let's hear what Ben has to say about that.
It is not possible for you to get to the answer given the pieces of the puzzle, which means it's not really a murder mystery, it's just kind of more of a dramedy. And as a dramedy, on its own merits, it fails. Because as a dramedy, none of the characters are really interesting enough, except for perhaps Josh O'Connor's character and Daniel Craig, to hold your interest. Josh Brolin, who plays the Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, is charismatic and interesting, but he's the murder victim, and so he's basically out of the movie inside of the first third of the movie.
I mean, I don't think that the murder victim being missing for a portion of the movie is much of a problem, but honestly, he's not really missing for the first third of the movie, as a lot of that is flashbacks to whenever he was alive. Either way, I think it is interesting how the film uses the spaces where he is absent to show how Wakes affects the other characters. You get a sense of how he hurts, abuses, and even inspires the people in this town. He's a character who's had such a ridiculous presence that it's not that hard to believe that he was actually faking his death whenever he seemingly emerges from the grave, which is probably the best trick the film plays.
Now we go to the actual plot of the movie. Basically, Josh O'Connor is a young priest who's been deployed to this parish run by Josh Brolin's Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, who is this charismatic and nasty right-wing priest. He's there basically to yell at all the people who come into his fold and to alienate them. The very basis of this movie is that religion is bad unless it's basically the opiate of the masses. That's really the view of religion. Rian Johnson clearly hates Catholicism. He clearly hates religion. His basic take on religion is that religion, which sets moral standards and demands things of you, is bad. Only morons believe it. The original story is nonsense and trash. And basically, if it offers you any value, it's only the value in having kind of a good-hearted, low-level psychologist. And if you have somebody who's sympathetic to you and offers you a feeling of absolution, that this is the only thing that matters in religion. Everything else is completely a waste of time.
I think one thing is very clear in this movie. In fact, it's pretty clear in all of his films, even back to The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson does not hate Christianity or religion. In fact, it seems to influence a lot of his art, even if he no longer is Christian himself. Ben also isn't Christian himself, and I honestly find it quite strange how black and white Ben tries to make this movie's representation of Christianity out to be, because it's honestly not true at all. The majority of characters in this movie are Christians, and several of them are sympathetic. Even if a lot of these characters do terrible things and get indoctrinated into Wicks' cult, I don't think it's usually just their faith that is shown to drive them to these ends. But rather, the movie seems to be an examination of just how awful religion can be whenever it becomes a tool of people who seek to glorify themselves, push their bigoted beliefs, and wield it as a tool to hurt others. And in this particular movie, they practically worship Wicks, not God. They will follow anything he says and hide anything he does. Well, it is up until it starts having real consequences for them. And on the other end, Judd, the main character, is far from a perfect person himself. He literally admits to killing another man in a fit of rage in the past. And it's also undeniable that his view of Christianity and faith at the start of the movie is naive. And over the movie, he is practically pushed to his breaking point. But this also makes the movie much more interesting. And of course, the film is filled with beautiful speeches draped in glowing light, as Judd espouses what he believes and the importance that Christianity plays in his life. This may not be a Christian film per se, but it's a film about Christianity that is really willing to grapple with the worst aspects of it while not totally maligning it. It's a lot better than most films about Christianity, which either ignore it to avoid controversy or Christian puff pieces that exist to be devoured and forgotten by their audience of evangelical families, afraid of saying anything real. The scene in the movie where Judd stops everything to pray over a woman who he doesn't even know is one of the best scenes of truly Christ-like love that I've ever seen in a film. And as a Christian myself, it's really nice to see a film that gets to the root of one of the main contradictions at the core of the church. You don't have to agree with everything this film has to say, but it's just incorrect to write it off as the movie just wanting the church to sit by and say nothing. Overall, I think that Ben just sort of hates the sort of Christianity that Judd represents because he isn't politically aligned with it. Teaching empathy and acceptance is so far from his political beliefs that he can't stand any movie that portrays a moderately progressive Christian like Judd in any positive light. A Christian who actually shows unconditional love instead of just preaching it. I guess he just can't comprehend that somebody would actually follow religion and believe in the core tenets of compassion and kindness. And maybe also not be the biggest fans of the centuries of horrible actions committed by Christians and the church alike. For Ben, this movie is just another target in a never-ending culture war, so obviously he was never going to go into it with any sort of curiosity or any willingness to hear what Rian Johnson had to say. And honestly, I just feel bad for the guy. He's gotten very predictable.
Truly everybody who is presented as a true villain of the piece is radically right-wing, and Rian Johnson isn't making any bones about this. Like, clearly, he is aiming for this. If you go character by character, everybody is either a sort of ignorant tag-along, like, for example, Thomas Hayden Church, who plays Glenn Close's husband in this. He's sort of an innocent tag-along. Or a vicious right-winger. So, for example, Josh Brolin's Wicks, he himself gets up there and he spews a bunch of kind of raging right-wing rhetoric about how the world is a threat to the church and you have to fight the world, and then it shows a bunch of YouTube videos of him, and they're all labeled with essentially Andrew Tate-like YouTube labels.
Andrew Tate isn't the first person I would compare this guy to. Another internet personality comes to mind, but I just can't remember who.
And because he's a right-wing priest, that's why he's bad, as opposed to Josh O'Connor's priest, who basically has nothing valuable to say other than, I feel your pain. The Bill Clinton view of Catholicism.
Honestly, I think the Bill Clinton view of Christianity has a lot in common with Catholic priests, if you catch my drift. But from the first scene, Judd's perspective is very clear. His role as a priest isn't to fight the world, but to heal it. And from his own experience, fighting everything he doesn't understand or like only results in jaws being broken and hatred. I think that the fact that he struggles with violence makes his character 10 times more interesting. He's a broken person who believes in forgiveness and understanding because he knows he needs it as much as anyone else. And in contrast, Wicks is also a very deeply flawed person, but he hides his sin, all while shaming and alienating others for all sorts of things. He was guilty of sins which deeply hurt the people around him and who believed in him, and he concealed these sins all while pushing others away from the church because of their sins, which are often significantly less damaging to others. Wicks hated the world. He constantly fought with it, and with the people who made up the world. He saw himself as a leader who would crush his enemies, and he built a cult of personality and did everything he could to isolate and prey on vulnerable people, dragging many of them down with him. It's to the point where the regulars are afraid of doing anything religious without Wicks there. And to see a pretty normal prayer group of Judds is a horrifying act of betrayal, and it's only made worse in their eyes whenever Judd reveals his violent past to them. The group has been conditioned to only want to see a seemingly perfect being like Wicks, and an imperfect human like Judd isn't someone who they can deify and rally behind. He's just another person who struggles like them. They want something that makes them feel secure, even if it's a security built in hatred and fear. Because whenever they're submitting to Wicks, at least they're on the winning team. At least they're in the end group. Oh yeah, in case you aren't somehow convinced yet that Judd isn't just Bill Clinton and Wicks is a little worse than a tiny bit right-wing, I think the scene that's not even 30 minutes into the film where Judd tears into Wicks and goes in, case by case, explaining how Wicks is not only making the problems of those in his flock worse, but also explaining how they could solve these problems. Not pointless therapy speech. The speech is someone who is truly on fire for God and wants to help people. But he's too kind, too forgiving, and too welcoming for Ben to see him as a true Christian, because those aren't the part of Christianity that Ben cares about. Ben only cares about the parts he can insert into his list of talking points, the things that help out in his policy list given to him by billionaires. And no hate to non-Christians at all. I have no problems with criticisms of this film or Christianity in general, but it sure is weird how Ben, a non-Christian, spends a very large portion of this video complaining that characters like Judd don't fit into his model of Christianity.
Then you have Glenn Close,
Monsignor Wicks,
playing Martha Delacroix, who's a devout church lady, and she is right-hand woman to Jefferson Wicks, who is the son. There's like a whole backstory where Jefferson Wicks is the son of a disgraced young woman who herself is the daughter of the Monsignor in the church. Basically, he's also really, really rich, and he converts his entire fortune into a diamond, but won't give it to his poor daughter because he's a bad priest, right? He's a terrible priest because, again, any standards are terrible.
I mean, I think the movie makes it pretty clear by the end that it wasn't just standards that the priest was upholding. She was basically held in this freaky little community against her will, constantly accosted and judged for her lifestyle, which appears to mostly have consisted of smoking and sunbathing. And then whenever the fortune finally provided her a chance to escape, the priest literally offed himself in order to avoid her obtaining it. While it's undeniable that she acted in ways that weren't Christian per se, she was also never even given the choice if she wanted to be Christian or raised in this town filled with people who accosted her for everything she did. Treating her like garbage wasn't the good Christian thing to do, and it certainly wasn't what Jesus would have done.
And so he deprives her of her fortune, she ends up dying, and the son can't find the fortune because the grandfather hides the fortune somewhere. But the young secretary knows where the fortune is. And later she becomes Glenn Close. If all this is confusing, that's because it's deliberately meant to be.
Oh no, the mystery movie is deliberately confusing. This is awful. And now my favorite part of every Ben Shapiro video, the overly long ad read. Honestly, he's kind of fell off. He used to have like 3 of these in every video, but now it's just one lonely VPN sponsorship. So in honor of that sponsorship, let's go ahead and have a little break of our own.
What I do for a living is I lie on the internet for money. I love big oil, spit in my mouth, 7 o'clock every night, I would drive at 85 miles per hour with the kids to actually swirl around and run over dogs for like 25 minutes. I was completely unaware that this is really dangerous. Nobody knows the death toll. RIP. Jeremy Renner, who is a town doctor, also a quasi-right-wing figure. There are a few references to that.
Okay, I'm like 90% sure the only right-wing things that Dr. Jeremy Renner does in this movie is become more misogynistic after his wife leaves him. I guess being a divorced dad who hates women is inherently right-wing or something, according to Ben.
Andrew Scott playing Lee Ross, a best-selling author, is a complete throwaway. I mean, again, this cast is a complete throwaway.
I mean, I agree that the author is by far the least impactful character out of the main cast, and he was one that I was never once suspicious of, but he also doesn't take up that much time, and he has a pretty funny gag at the end, so I'm not really complaining.
So the whole town is set up as this really right-wing town under the auspices of this Monsignor, who's a right-wing figure. They're all judgmental, they're all terrible, they're all evil. Some of them are participating in murder. The ones who are not terrible and evil are victims of the terrible, evil right-wingers, and all the rest.
So Ben does 100% agree that most of these people suck. And I mean, this was true in the last 2 Knives Out movie as well. Most of the cast are pretty awful, and it makes sense. Movie is a murder mystery, and you kind of have to suck to murder someone. And you have to have lots of people that the audience is suspicious of. So, I mean, it makes sense. I don't think the movie really hates any of these characters though. Sure, they do awful things and many of them do end up dead because of it. But the message is pretty consistently that these are people who have had things about them that are or were great. And Judd is constantly showing them grace. Dr. Jeremy Renner seems to have been a good dad in the past, and I mean, he was a doctor as well. Lee Ross, the author, had to look up his name, was once a great and imaginative writer, and Louise literally carried the church on her back and genuinely tried to be a great Christian in the way she was taught all of her life. But they were all dragged into the warped faith that Wicks created. In his weird mixture of fundamentalism and self-aggrandizing, he drew out the worst of them, and they happily followed along with him, ignoring the people he hurt until it was finally their turn on a chopping block. And until the very end of the movie, Judd continues to offer them grace, and the few that accepted and escaped from the church end up doing a lot better. I also think the moral of them ignoring the harm that Wicks does until it starts impacting them is also a very important moral. One that should be said again and again, is ignoring what a fascist like Wicks does to others is a pretty bad idea for yourself, is that in-group will just keep getting smaller and smaller. Oh yeah, and Ben just completely leaves out Simone, one of my absolute favorite characters in the movie. Her arc is a perfect example of the difference between Judd's Christianity and Wicks, as Wicks just gives her empty promises of her problems going away if she just follows, and bankrolls him, while Judd provides a simple, reliable foundation for her. Their daily bread, as he says. The miracle isn't that her pain will go away, but the miracle is that she won't stop trying to live, trying to do what she loves.
And again, the politics of the film is so scornful of traditional Catholicism. At no point do you get a real defense of Catholicism in any real way. Again, the only value of religion in this particular movie is that a religious person could theoretically make a lady feel better after she led a terrible life, and then she's dying. That's pretty much the feeling of the movie. Near the end of the film, Josh O'Connor's character offers Daniel Craig the ability to come to a mass, and Daniel Craig says, "There's nothing I would less like to do," which I think is Rian Johnson's generalized perspective. So that's the politics of the film.
I mean, yeah, this complete might go beyond surface level and veer into absolute insanity. No way is any movie with a lead character who's so incredible and so incredibly Christian a movie that only shows Catholicism is something to comfort a woman who's led a terrible life. And I honestly don't even know who's referring to here. I guess it's Louise, but like, she was also probably the only character more Catholic than Judd throughout her life. She did terrible things near the end of her life, inexcusable things, and she regrets them deeply. But I think it's very harsh to say her entire life is terrible. And yes, the Christian God, the God who I believe in, would welcome her with open arms and would accept her as she was. And I think this view of Christianity was like a very big part of the movie. I don't really see how you missed that, Ben. I will also say I'm not Catholic, and I don't think that movie is all that Catholic either. Rian Johnson was raised Protestant, and in an interview he states that the main reason he set it in a Catholic church was because it would make the movie look much nicer. Plus, I'm sure he enjoyed the usage of the confession thing in a murder mystery, as that was super slick script writing. But yeah, this might not be the most accurate Catholic film.
None of the performances stand out enough that you remember any of them. Again, the cast is just huge, and everybody's a throwaway. The only characters you're going to remember coming out of this are Daniel Craig, Josh O'Connor, Glenn Close, and Josh Brolin. Everybody else is a complete throwaway.
Okay, bud.
It appears that the budget on this film was $152 million. $152 million. You have any idea how much money that is? That is so much money. And maybe Netflix makes back their money on subscriptions because, again, star-studded cast, big P&A budget, and all the rest of it. But this is a lockbox mystery in a small town requiring no real special effects. Where did that money go?
Every movie is crazy expensive nowadays. I don't really get it either. But like, that's Netflix's problem, not mine.
And I assume people like this movie, but it's 144 minutes. It's 2 hours and 24 minutes. It's overlong. It's overstuffed. Nobody gets their fair shake. None of the clues lead to the final conclusion. You can understand the clues and still not get to the final conclusion. It's lazy. It's just lazy, which is the hallmark of Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson is a lazy writer.
If there's one thing that Rian Johnson is insanely good at, it's pacing. This movie was the perfect length in my humble opinion. No wasted scenes, constant reveals, character moments, and just enough space to let you think about it just a bit. Maybe Ben watched this in the background while doom scrolling True Social or something, but yeah, I heavily disagree. He also talks a bit more about how the movie was hard to predict. And yeah, this isn't a movie you can totally predict. I don't think that's that important though, so let's move on to the conclusion.
Even the end of the movie makes very, very little sense. Like a tag on the end as to what happened with this fortune that's sort of at the center of all of this that's been converted into the diamond. And instead of using the diamond to do something good or worthwhile or use that fortune to make people's lives better, the diamond is just sitting inside a statue at the end.
I mean, thematically, this is the apple of Eve. The diamond is the original sin incarnate, and while it is undeniable that logically it should have been given to the poor by the old priest or something, at this point it'd be ridiculously hard for Judd to do that while Cy is breathing down his neck. So Judd focuses on just being a good priest, which is what he's good at. So makes sense to me. Maybe someday the diamond will have a purpose, but it's definitely not a crazy plot hole he doesn't give it to the poor or something.
None of the clues lead to the final conclusion. You can understand the clues and still not get to the final conclusion. It's lazy. It's just lazy, which is the hallmark of Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson is a lazy writer. It's bad. It's a bad movie. I wish I could say that it were not a bad movie, but this has become typical for Rian Johnson, who really, I think, has a deep and abiding dislike of his own audience. He's all about just, can I subvert the expectations of my audience? He doesn't care about whether the audience expectations are good or useful. All he truly cares about is subverting the audience. I'm not sure there's a more overrated filmmaker working today than Rian Johnson. Honestly, it's astonishing how overrated he is.
This has been a long-running mantra from people who don't like Rian Johnson. And sure, I can kind of see the problems with The Last Jedi. Man, I need to rewatch that movie. But this is a mystery movie. Subverting the audience's expectations is the whole magic trick, and it's not like this movie makes no sense. Every subversion is built on setup and follows the themes of the film. Characters are honestly very consistent in this movie. We just don't see all of them at the start. The movie is lying by omission. That's like the whole thing this film does. Like, Ben calls Rian Johnson lazy a bunch at the end, and whatever. I don't think it's a big deal that some super rich director got insulted on the internet. But a review like this is nothing but lazy. So it's kind of annoying to hear Ben leverage this complaint.
I have my opinion.
If you watched all that and now you still want...
Oh, ready, go ahead. And that's the video. So one thing I didn't really mention in this video is that Shapiro has said much worse things in the past than complaining about a film I like. And also this video was kind of a Trojan horse, as I kind of just wanted to talk about Wake Up Dead Man. But also making this video has reminded me about The Last Jedi, and honestly I kind of want to rewatch it and make a video over that. So let me know if you're interested in that. But that's all for this video. So thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this, and thanks for watching.